Watching CNN. In just a few days, President Trump may come face to face with the president of Ukraine at the UN General Assembly. It is a meeting that would take place as a July 25th phone call Trump made to his foreign counterpart has sparked intensifying scrutiny. A claim of treason by at least one of Trump's 2020 primary challengers and a potential push toward impeachment for reluctant Democrats. The day after Robert Mueller testified to Congress, which was also the same day Trump cried no collusion and said he was vindicated from any accusations he conspired with Russia in the 2016 election. The day after, the president of the United States was on the phone with the president of Ukraine. And Trump is now openly admitting that during that phone call, he discussed former vice president and potential 2020 rival Joe Biden, along with his son, Hunter, and what Trump claims was corruption by one or both men. Sources tell CNN that Trump pressed Ukraine's president to investigate the younger Biden. And while the president doubled down on those claims today and over the weekend, we should be crystal clear. There is zero evidence of wrongdoing by either Biden. In fact, Ukraine's current prosecutor said that in May that Hunter Biden did not violate any Ukrainian laws. And moments ago, a top aide to Ukraine's president says that he told Rudy Giuliani that Ukraine won't be opening or closing investigations, quote unquote, on command. But back to that phone call. Now, we know a whistleblower raised a red flag to supervisors. We don't know what Trump said. And now that may be about to change. Boris Sanchez is our CNN White House correspondent there. And Boris, what are you hearing about this possible release of the transcript of said phone call?
Well, Brooke, we've learned that White House officials are actually considering releasing a transcript of this conversation between President Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart. And sources have told CNN that the White House counsel's office is now a part of these deliberations. One source telling CNN that these transcripts could potentially be released soon, though they wouldn't give a more specific timetable. From what we understand, they're going over specific details, considerations like what format these transcripts would be released in, what vehicle they might use to release them, and what redactions, if any, they would need to make. Publicly, we've seen the disagreements between President Trump and some within his own administration. The president saying that he wants these transcripts released. His Secretary of State, his Treasury Secretary, even his Press Secretary, Stephanie Grisham, today saying that this may set a dangerous precedent. This may be a bad idea. That echoes what we're hearing is going on behind closed doors inside the White House. Officials are concerned that potentially releasing these transcripts could open the White House up to having to release other transcripts of conversations that President Trump has had with other world leaders, like Vladimir Putin, for example. So there is some concern about what precedent this might set. Conversely, though, there are some within the White House that believe, given everything that the president has already said about this conversation with the Ukrainian president, that just releasing these transcripts could hasten the news cycle and get this controversy out of the headlines. However, of course, not doing that, stonewalling, could drag this out and yet create another legal battle between this White House and Congress, Brooke.
Okay. Boris Sanchez, thank you so much. What does all of this mean for Democrats up on Capitol Hill? Well, it may be just the thing to get lawmakers opposed to impeachment to change their minds. CNN has learned that some Democrats, some House Democrats who were hesitant to take action are ready to publicly back this move, especially if there's proof that President Trump held up military aid to Ukraine in exchange for investigating the Bidens. At least one freshman Democrat, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, says that her party's refusal to hold Trump accountable is a bigger scandal than Trump's actions. House Intel Chief Adam Schiff tells CNN impeachment may be the only option in this case.
If the president is essentially withholding military aid at the same time that he is trying to browbeat a foreign leader into doing something illicit, that is providing dirt on his opponent during a presidential campaign, then that may be the only remedy that is co-equal to the evil that conduct represents.
Let's have a conversation. Gloria Borger is CNN's chief political analyst. Kim Whaley is a former federal prosecutor and former associate independent counsel in the Watergate investigation. She is also the author of the new book, How to Read the Constitution and Why. So that's germane to all of this. Gloria, let me begin with you. We know that Speaker Pelosi and Chairman Schiff coordinated on strategy over the weekend. Is this the moment for Speaker Pelosi where there is no more mixed messages, where she has to go all in?
I think she was sending a very, very strong signal to the White House and also to her troops, you know, some of whom are getting really restless, which is to say, I hear you, this is different, this is important. And what she's doing is she's taking the pulse of those 40 Democrats or so who won in Republican districts and in Trump districts and saying, look, how are you guys feeling about this? Because she can't make a move unless they have changed their position as well. I think she still believes that, of course, impeachment would go nowhere in the Senate, but at this point, it's very clear that she thinks this story about Ukraine has taken it to a different level for her. And we heard that from Adam Schiff, and who said basically that the Rubicon may have been crossed.
That's the Democrats. Kim, on the flip side of it, for the Republicans, Mitt Romney, for example, is one who's come forward and said that it would be, quote, troubling in the extreme if Trump pressured Ukraine's president, adding that it is critical for facts to come out. But the thing is, President Trump stood there and publicly admitted this. So what more could Romney or anyone else need?
Well, we don't know whether this extortion actually happened, and extortion is a crime, and that means give me this or else. In this instance, it would be give me dirt on my political opponents, or I'll withhold this $250 million in military funding. But I don't know that it's even the evil, to use Congressman Schiff's point, that is really the issue here. As I talk about in the book, it has to do with the rule of law, and there are Republicans and Democrats who care about that. And what I mean by that is if there are red lights that people routinely run and you never get a ticket, you run over and over and over again, then the red light is no longer a red light. People ignore it, and then people get hurt. And this is a president who we haven't seen any tickets being given him.
Would he have to say, I did this? We know they withheld the aid, but would he have to say, I did A plus B, and if it equals C, then it equals C? Yeah. Is that what he has to do?
I think the question is he's done enough to start impeachment hearings for sure. Yeah. And the Congress has to ask themselves, are we going to have a check on the office of the presidency? Because the judicial branch is out. The judicial branch is out pursuant to the OLC memo banning the prosecutors, federal prosecutors, from investigating and prosecuting a president. So the only potential ticket can come from the Congress, and the Congress represents the United States people, and the idea is that we are the bosses of ourselves. So if Congress doesn't act, then they're abdicating their congressional prerogative, and we're going to be left with a potential dictatorship. Look,
so let me hang on, and then I want you to jump in on that, Gloria, because I thought the Washington Post, to everything Kim just said, this is how the Washington Post summed it up. Quote, now President Trump, now he is alleged to have leveraged taxpayer dollars and U.S. military might to extort a foreign government for opposition research on a political opponent, and it is unclear what consequences, if any, he may face. Unclear. Go ahead, Gloria.
That's absolutely true. And I think that Congress needs to start doing its job and be firm about it. I mean, they could have walked Corey Lewandowski out of his testimony the other day when he wasn't cooperating, and they didn't. And I think now they have to demand what they should have gotten in the first place, which is the transcript of this conversation.
How do we know? Pardon my cynicism, but how do we know, even when the transcript comes out, that it hasn't been,
Well, you have to have faith in something. And the Inspector General went up and said, I am not allowed to do my job, and I've been handcuffed by the Department of Justice, and I've looked at this. I've looked at this whistleblower complaint, and you meaning Congress, you should have this transcript right now, and then you can start making your decisions, because I believe it is urgent. And so Congress needs to get this. And now, as our White House reporters are saying, there's disagreement in the White House about whether the transcript should be released to Congress. It is the law. It should be released to Congress. And remember during Mueller, Trump said, I'll be happy to testify. And then, of course, it was his lawyers who kept him from testifying. Well, now it's Trump saying, I'm happy to release the transcript. And his lawyers are saying, well, maybe you shouldn't.
Kim, I want to hear from you, but let me just get this sound in. So basically, Trump world has been putting up this united front. Even General James Mattis, who left the administration last fall, this is what they're saying.
I think that would be a terrible precedent. Conversations between world leaders are meant to be confidential.
We don't release transcripts very often. It's the rare case. Those are private conversations between world leaders, and it wouldn't be appropriate to do so except in the most extreme circumstances. There's no evidence that would be appropriate here at this point.
Should a president be asking foreign leaders to investigate political opponents?
Yeah, Martha, this is not something I have any background on. I don't know anything more than what I've read in the news, and apparently no one has seen the complaint. So I really prefer to talk about things I know more about.
So even incredibly well-respected General Mattis said that. And let me just add that Trump ally Lindsey Graham says that if this happened, that this would constitute executive privilege. Kim.
There are two items in play here. One is the transcript of the actual conversation. And I do think there's a constitutional argument, a strong one, that the president needs to have confidential communications with foreign leaders that aren't made public. And that is within the president's discretion to release. He's indicated he will release it. I don't think we can take a whole lot of what he says at any point in time to the bank, so to speak. So we'll have to see what happens there. But the second piece is the actual whistleblower complaint. The person who was concerned, who overheard. We don't know if the complaint itself contains a transcript, but that person certainly has information. And the law is very, very clear, as Gloria indicated, that that whistleblower complaint shall be transmitted to the Congress if the Inspector General determines it's important enough. That was triggered here. They get 7 days to hand it off. The DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, is saying no. He is saying, I will not comply with an act of Congress, which, remember, is the people's word. So Congress made a determination. This kind of information needs to be communicated with the Congress so we can make sure that the executive branch is held accountable for extreme wrongdoing. All of that's been triggered. So Congress should get that document. The whistleblower complaint should be in court, in my mind, right now to protect its prerogative and get a temporary injunction, TRO, forcing the disclosure of that, or a writ of mandamus, and then also ask to actually call this witness, bring this witness before Congress, maybe confidentially if there's state secrets, and ask what actually happened. Congress has its own independent investigative authority. It doesn't need to rely on the executive branch for the facts.
Got it. So Congress, if you're listening, I hear both of you loud and clear. Ladies, thank you so much. Gloria Borger, Kim Whaley, appreciate the conversation. We have more breaking news this afternoon. An American soldier is under arrest in part for allegedly discussing plans to target a U.S. news network and a Democratic presidential candidate. So stand by for details there. Also ahead, a high school football game canceled after cheerleaders are punished for holding up a Trump sign. Why school officials were worried about safety. And Prince Harry and Meghan arrive in Cape Town. It is their first leg of what's expected to be an emotional journey.
His name is Jarrett William Smith. He's 24. He was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. What's interesting is this would appear to be something like we've seen with domestic terrorism, something that the FBI, Department of Justice, have been very concerned about. And what happens in this situation is around August 19th, there appears to be contact between this person and someone working for the FBI, where he talks about wanting to do an attack, conduct some kind of an attack in the United States. And then there are conversations, they go back and forth, and that is where he talks about possibly targeting a major American news organization using a car-style bomb to launch a pretty severe attack on a news organization. They don't say what that news organization is. He is charged with distributing material on how to make bombs on Facebook. This started all back in March. The FBI was alerted to him through Facebook, basically through these postings where he was talking about how to make bombs, how to make cell phone bombs in particular. And so he's been on their radar for quite some time, but he doesn't get back on their radar, it appears, until August, where he talks about launching attacks in the U.S., this news organization. And then there's talk of possibly targeting Beto O'Rourke. Of course, he's the candidate running, Democratic candidate running for president. So obviously a lot of concern here. This was not based on any kind of international terrorism beliefs like we've seen ISIS or some other group. This all appears to be just something that he wanted to do. Why, we don't know specifically, but obviously these are the types of cases I think that's important to note that the FBI is very much concerned about. And I think what we had here is that they started going back and looking at types of people perhaps that could launch attacks within the U.S. And this was the type of person that they're concerned about.
Well done, FBI. Shimon, thank you very much. As a top Democrat escalates the possibility of pursuing impeachment, calling the president's phone call with the Ukrainian president, quote unquote, the most profound violation of the presidential oath of office. The president is once again deflecting any wrongdoing to Biden and a conspiracy theory about his son Hunter in Ukraine.
The one who's got the problem is Biden. Because you look at what Biden did what they would like to have me do, except for one problem. I didn't do it. What Biden did is a disgrace. What his son did is a disgrace. The son took money from Ukraine. The son took money from China. A lot of money from China.
CNN reporter Daniel Dale is with me now. And so, Daniel, what's the backstory behind the president's accusations there?
So in 2015, Ukraine appointed a chief prosecutor by the name of Viktor Shokin, who quickly earned a reputation for basically not prosecuting anybody when it came to corruption. He was widely criticized for letting the elite operate with impunity, even of being corrupt himself. And the U.S. and U.S. allies, the International Monetary Fund, were all pressuring Ukraine to get rid of this guy, to appoint someone more effective. And Vice President Joe Biden, who was the Obama administration's point man on Ukraine, personally pressured Ukraine. He said, I will not give you $1 billion in loan guarantees unless you sack the prosecutor, as you apparently have promised to do. Now, Biden has been very open about this pressure effort. He's touted it as his own anti-corruption work. Listen to what he said at an event in 2018.
I'm desperately concerned about the backsliding on the part of Kyiv in terms of corruption. They made, I'll give you one concrete example. I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
So why does the Trump campaign and the president himself take issue with this anti-corruption work? Well, they point out that at the same time as the Vice President Biden was pressuring the Ukrainians, his son Hunter Biden sat on the board of directors of a natural gas company in Ukraine whose owner was supposedly under investigation by this prosecutor's office. Now, that's true. Hunter Biden did sit on that board. It was supposedly under investigation. But here are the holes in the Trump theory. One is that, again, this prosecutor wasn't investigating or prosecuting much of anybody. And there have been multiple reports now that this particular investigation was basically sidelined. It was dormant at the time the vice president applied the pressure. Second of all, Trump has repeatedly claimed that Hunter Biden himself was under investigation. There is no evidence whatsoever for that. And the third thing is that Vice President Biden was pushing the Ukrainians to appoint a more effective prosecutor. It's not clear how, in this case, his son would have benefited from an ineffective prosecutor being replaced by a prosecutor who actually did his job. So at this point, this is a conspiracy theory with a whole lot of holes that have not been filled by the president.
Thank you for the perspective and the fact. Drug overdoses that left 3 people dead, 4 others in the hospital in Pittsburgh. It all unfolded Sunday morning when authorities responded to a report of an unconscious man in an apartment elevator. Another man was found in a similar condition just a couple blocks away, and so police traced both men back to this Pittsburgh apartment where they found 5 other people who also apparently overdosed. CNN's Polo Sandoval is covering all of this for us, and the 3 who've died, the 4 in the hospital, they were all wearing this orange wristband. Right. What happened?
It was all part of this big mystery about 36 hours ago.
Yeah.
A lot changed in the last 36 hours in the story here, because initially you had 7 men in their 30s, all wearing that same orange wristband, something that we'd wear maybe to a concert or a festival. So immediately officials were afraid that this was perhaps some kind of a bigger health scare here. But now they can say definitively that this was actually a case of multiple overdoses, mainly cocaine. And this morning, investigators arrested somebody who they say was a provider of these drugs here, a man by the name of Peter Rene Sanchez Montalvo, known on the streets as Carlos, according to investigators. And they believe that he was at a nightclub on the city's south side on Saturday night, there in Pittsburgh. That is when he encountered these 7 individuals who would later overdose. And then, according to investigators, that they went to an apartment complex nearby for an after party. And that is when authorities believe that the drugs were essentially distributed, that these 7 men then took these drugs, and then many of them, according to one witness, just immediately began to drop. Here's the question here: what was in that? I spoke to the medical examiner there in Pittsburgh that says at this point it's simply too soon. We still have to wait for the toxicology reports to come back. But again, this started as what a possible scare, but now authorities can describe this as an isolated incident. But it certainly doesn't take away from the tragedy here. Regardless of the circumstances, you have 7 men whose lives were changed, for 3 of them permanently, who died, and for the other 4 who continue to recover as this man faces federal charges.
Okay. Let us know what the ME eventually says. Polo, thank you very much on that story out of Pittsburgh. Also this today, controversy over a pro-Trump banner forced officials at a North Carolina high school to abruptly cancel a football game over safety concerns. Cheerleaders at North Stanley High School near Charlotte were placed on probation after they posed with a Trump 2020 Make America Great Again banner prior to a game back in August. The North Carolina Athletic Association determined that the squad had violated school policy banning political advertisements on campus or at school events. That move sparked protests, and so when hundreds of supporters of these cheerleaders vowed to show up at a game on Friday night, school officials decided that there would not be a game. CNN's Diane Gallagher is working this one for us, and so tell me more. What'd you find out?
Yeah, so, Brooke, first of all, they canceled the game, but they quickly rescheduled it. The North Stanley Comets played their game on Saturday morning. They actually won that game, but what happens going forward? And that's what the school is trying to deal with now, because those groups that claim that they were going to come out and support those cheerleaders have said, we're going to go and we're going to protest and show our support at future games. We're even going to show up at school board meetings. And so the school didn't say it was necessarily a threat that caused them to reschedule and postpone that game. They said that they were notified of additional information that could compromise safety measures. And so we're not exactly sure what that means. They have not elaborated, but the protests are likely going to continue at this school and in front of these games going forward. Now, the Athletic Association still has those cheerleaders on probation, and it does appear that the association has kind of either backtracked or maybe clarified what probation means, Brooke. The kids at first were concerned that this meant that maybe they couldn't cheer. They weren't sure what it meant for them on the team. The association says that it's just kind of a warning. Don't do it again. If you do it again, maybe that could result in a suspension. And that's what created a lot of the, for lack of a better word, drama that has since surrounded this situation. People who, in large part, aren't associated with the school have been getting in their separate corners online and sort of putting up this situation as either the kids' free speech, they say, was violated, or that these kids shouldn't be using political signs and political things while they're wearing a school uniform representing the school. And so you have adults who are rallying around children, and these children who've already been spoken to by their school, we're told, have been told just don't do it again, are kind of the victims in this at this point, the entire student body moving the game and wondering what they're going to do going forward. We couldn't find anything specific in the handbook from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association that says they can't use any sort of political signs or things of that nature. But I will say, Brooke, that the school itself has put out multiple letters to parents and the student body asking them to please, if you're going to wear signage or you're going to wear short shirts supporting anything coming to our games going forward, can you just make it the North Stanley Comets and make it about our school district instead of politics?
Keep it school focused. Diane Gallagher, thank you for that. Walking in Princess Diana's footsteps, Prince Harry's emotional journey to America for the first official tour as a family. This trip has been everything but typical for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Day one of Prince Harry and his wife Meghan's 10-day trip was full of dancing in the streets, hugging locals, and it also included messages about women's empowerment from both of them. CNN royal correspondent Max Foster is following the royals in South Africa, and I know there's so much significance in where they're going and what they're doing, and of course everyone watching for baby Archie. But talk to me first about what Meghan has said about herself, and especially being a woman of color.
Well, they absolutely hit the ground running. It was extraordinary. So no red carpet welcome as we normally expect of these events at the airport and a line of dignitaries. The couple headed straight into this township, and this is the township with the highest murder rate in the country. So more than 200 murders a year reported to the local police station. A big lockdown, but there's a big message about them going in there, and there's a particular women's project that the Duchess was really keen to promote, and it's an incredible project. Young women, girls who've faced violence in the township, taught about empowerment, what that means, self-defense classes. She really praised them for their work, wanted to promote that work, but in a really sort of unusual moment for a royal, a senior royal, she reached out to them in a way that, you know, I don't think any other member of the royal family could do. It was all about identifying with the girls in that township.
May I just say that while I'm here with my husband as a member of the royal family, I want you to know that for me, I am here with you as a mother, as a wife, as a woman of color, and as your sister.
You can only imagine, Brooke, what it was like for people living there to see them come in the first place and then to be able to identify with her. It was a quite amazing moment, really, for people from the harshest of backgrounds to be able to identify with such a big celebrity, a member of the royal family.
Reaching out, hugging these children, it does remind you of so many years ago. And Diana, Max Foster, thank you very much in South Africa for us. Meantime, the murder trial begins for the police officer who shot a man inside his own apartment while she was off duty. Hear her defense. Police officer who killed an unarmed man who was sitting in his own apartment is now underway. Officer Amber Geiger was returning home from work when she went into the home of Botham Jean. Geiger says that she thought she was going into her own apartment and thought the man in the apartment was an intruder when she opened fire, killing the 26-year-old accountant in his own home last September. Geiger called 911 moments after the shooting.
Oh my God, I'm done. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. Stay with me, bud.
We remember this story when it first came out. Ed Lavandera is there covering this trial for us. What's happened so far, Ed?
Hi, Brooke. Well, we are off to a salacious start in this trial of Amber Geiger. Prosecutors say that they went and reconstructed her day. Remember, Amber Geiger has said that she came home from work that day, a long day at work, exhausted, and that's why she was confused as to which apartment she was entering. Botham Jean lived right above her in that apartment complex just a few blocks away from Dallas Police Department headquarters. But prosecutors say that Amber Geiger was distracted, and they point to a series of sexually explicit text messages that she had been sharing with her police partner about 3.5 hours before she left work that day, and that from 6 p.m. till about 9:30 p.m. on the night of the shooting, she was exchanging these sexually explicit text messages, that she was not so tired and that she was going to come home and rest. Prosecutors say that she was planning a rendezvous with her partner after she had gotten off of work, and that she was making unreasonable choices and was so distracted by the conversation that she missed the obvious clues that she was entering the wrong apartment. One of the things they pointed out to is that there was a red floor mat in front of Botham Jean's apartment, and that there is no floor mat in front of her apartment. And then prosecutors described in emotional ways the last moments of the young man's life.
As Bo is trying to get up off the couch to find out what this intruder is doing coming into his home, she is leveling off her gun, having acquired her target, and she shoots at him twice. No opportunity for de-escalation. No opportunity for him to surrender. Bang, bang, rapid, double tap.
And so now we have just finished hearing this, wrapped up just moments ago, from prosecutors making their opening statements. We have not heard from defense attorneys just yet. Here in a few minutes, they will begin presenting their opening statements. And Brooke, this trial is expected to last several weeks. Brooke?
Salacious indeed. We'll let you get back in there. Ed Lavandera, thank you very much, in Dallas. Just into us here at CNN, new reporting from inside the White House as the president's phone call with Ukraine has more and more Democrats now calling for impeachment. Why the president's own advisors think he is in legal peril now. Plus, he is at the United Nations, popping in on...
He said in an interview early in September, Pence's office declined to comment.
Yeah, so I dug deeper into the numbers. We've seen reports 18 House Republicans retiring, but if you actually go back for the past 3 years since Trump was inaugurated, 40% of the House Republican Conference has left Washington, either being defeated in an election or just hung it up because they're sick of this and they know they can't speak out against the president. Mitchell, you know, he in particular said that he was really disturbed by Trump's tweet saying that Congresswomen of color should go back to their home countries, even though they were U.S. citizens and 3 of them were born here. He tried to get a hold of the president through Mike Pence, through Pence's chief of staff. Nobody would let him through. And literally 10 days after the tweet, he said, screw this, I'm out.
Unbelievable. Okay, Michael, you were at an event where Modi, the head of India, was praising the president. Let's listen to that and talk about it on the other side.
We have a very special person with us. His name is familiar to every person on the planet. Very popular. Friendliness, warmth, energy, a strong resolve to make America great again.
Know your audience. Know your audience.
Modi apparently does not speak in English very much. So that was rare, and it was clearly a big wet kiss to Trump. He's known for hugging politicians. Modi does all the time. He didn't, I don't think, give Trump a bear hug, but he went on and on and on. And I had thought earlier that Trump's going to that was because he wanted the love and adoration of the 50,000 people that were in the stadium. Actually, it turned out the love and adoration of the one guy standing next to him was more important.
So there's requited love today, because the president stopped by briefly at the climate summit, which is a huge summit at the UN, while Modi was speaking, and he didn't stay for very long. He wasn't going to go in the first place. Pete Buttigieg on the campaign trail is already jumping on this. I think we have a photo there saying, this is what the end of American global leadership looks like. Nia saying, wait a minute, this guy just stops by, he doesn't speak. But he did it because Modi was speaking, probably.
Yeah, and you got Pete Buttigieg, who isn't doing so well in some of these early polls, the Iowa polls. He's got to make some noise. He has been pretty good at sticking it to Trump, sticking it to the vice president. He's very kind of quick on his feet. So there he is, trying to take advantage of this moment and bust out of the pack.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on Inside Politics. Breonna Keeler starts right now.
I'm Breonna Keeler, live from CNN's Washington headquarters. Underway right now, the president admits to talking to Ukraine about investigating his political rival Joe Biden, effectively requesting that a foreign country meddle in the 2020 election. So now the question is, what are Democrats going to do about it? And did the Moscow Mitch taunt spark the Senate Majority Leader to change his mind and give states more money for election security? After an attack on Saudi oil infrastructure, President Trump moves U.S. military reinforcements into the region. But should American troops put their lives on the line for Saudi Arabia? Plus, the vice president uses an 8-car motorcade on a historic Michigan island that does not allow cars, and the underwater marriage proposal that went tragically wrong. We start with President Trump in New York at the United Nations General Assembly, still dogged by questions about a phone call with the Ukrainian president that's at the heart of a whistleblower complaint the Trump administration is refusing to share with Congress. The president admits he made the call, and he admits he brought up investigating a political rival, but he and the administration say there's nothing wrong with that. Caitlin Collins is in New York following the president there at the UN General Assembly. What are you hearing, Caitlin?
Well, clearly this has followed the president here to New York. It's kind of overshadowing a lot of the meetings. And right off the bat, as the president arrived here at the United Nations headquarters, that is something he was talking about immediately. And he was asked if he's worried about what you're hearing from Capitol Hill, which is the questions about whether or not this is going to be something that's going to change some of those Democrats who've been hesitant to call for his impeachment so far, whether or not it's going to change their mind, because some of them are arguing that this on its own is incriminating. The president was asked about that earlier today, Brianna, and this is how he responded.
How seriously are you taking the impeachment talk?
Not at all seriously. We had a perfect phone call with the president of Ukraine. Everybody knows it. It's just a Democrat witch hunt. Here we go again. They failed with Russia. They failed with recession. They failed with everything. And now they're bringing this up.
Are you willing to clear this up by releasing the whistleblower report, sir?
Quiet.
So you see right there at the end, Trump was asked, will you release this whistleblower's complaint as mandated by the law if it's deemed urgent by the Inspector General, which it has been. The president only said quiet. He didn't answer that. And that comes as the president on Twitter, as he's